Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be doing the For the Love of Classics book tag. This tag was created by Ange at Beyond the Pages. Unfortunately, she is not making videos anymore. She may come back at some point, I don't know, but as of right now, she doesn't make videos. However, she did make this tag a few years ago, and I don't think I ever did it. It's possible I just couldn't find it, but I actually did. So apologies if I really have done it and I just don't remember, but even if I did do it, it's been a few years, so it will be a nice opportunity to update my answers now anyway. Nobody tagged me. Like I said, it's been around for a few years, so a lot of people have already done it. However, if you have not done it, if you're newer to BookTube or just at the time didn't get around to it and want to do it, feel free to. I will of course have Ange's channel linked down below, even though, like I said, she hasn't been active, but just in case she comes back, I will have that linked for you, and you can also watch her old videos. And then I heard someone say that they think that the original video for this tag was taken down. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if I can find it, I will link that down below as well. I have not pre-planned any of these questions, so we'll just have to see how this goes, where I take it, because I really do not know. Hopefully none of them take too much thought from me so that I can get through them relatively quickly. The first question is, why do you read classics and how often do you read classics? Short answer is I just like classics. I really like the writing style, particularly of the 19th century. More recently published books can be wonderful and brilliant and have great writing, but there's just something about the language used in the 19th century novel that just speaks to me. I do like other classics as well, especially older classics, and modern classics I enjoy for the most part, but there are some that, a lot of them I feel like explore ideas a lot more than character and plot, and I'm a little more in the character and plot realm of preference. So anyway, but yes, I just like reading classics. I like the writing style in them. I also honestly like to understand people's references and kind of be a little bit more in the know about commonly read books, and so that's also another reason why I like to read classics. But for sure the biggest reason is just because I enjoy it and I enjoy the way they wrote. As for how often I read classics, I do read at least one classic every month. I have periods of time where I find myself craving a classic. I cannot just do recently published books or just do classics. I need both, and I need them both regularly, so definitely classics I pick up very regularly. Question 2 is, what is a period, country, culture that you haven't read many classics from and would like to? There's honestly so many. I think I'm going to start with actually American classics. I really have not read that many, mostly because the few that I have read, there's only been like one or two that have really stood out to me that I've really enjoyed. So I just have kind of put myself in a box of, I don't really think I like American classics very much, but I mean, there's so many different ones. I feel like it's unfair to just brush aside any American classic. I also more specifically would like to read more American classics from Black authors, particularly in the early 20th century, and I would love to get a little bit deeper into that culture of writing. Question 3, which modern book do you think will be a classic in 100 years' time? I feel like there's a lot I could say for this. I have a bunch floating around in my head, but I think I'm just going to say A Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Now, I personally didn't love that book. I thought it was pretty good. There was things I like about it, but unfortunately it did disappoint me. However, I do really like Circe, so I will say I think Madeline Miller, her first book, A Song of Achilles, will be like her big classic, but I do think Circe will kind of be that side book that she wrote that also is still known, maybe not quite as well known as A Song of Achilles, but still widespread enough. Like, I'm thinking of like Anne Bronte with Agnes Grey versus The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, where The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is like the big one, and then Agnes Grey people know about because of Anne Bronte being the author more than anything, and so I feel like that will be the case with Circe, is people know about Circe because they know about A Song of Achilles and it's the same author. Like I said, personally I prefer Circe, but I know that there's a lot of people who do prefer A Song of Achilles, and I can respect that. Question 4 is, what was the last classic you read? So this is actually great because I only finished this yesterday, I believe, so very recent, and that's Lady Anna by Anthony Trollope. This follows a young woman who is born into a very difficult situation. Her mother was mistreated by her father in such a way that the legitimacy of their daughter is in question. And so all of this is following the court case surrounding that, as well as Lady Anna being pulled in different directions as concerns her marriage. Overall, I'd say I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. There was a lot I didn't love about it, but there was also a lot that caused me to think a lot after I finished it. So kind of a mixed bag, but it is the last classic I read. Then the next question is, what was your first classic that you ever read? And the first classic I remember reading is Romeo and Juliet, which I read in, I think, 8th grade, or maybe it was 9th grade. I'm not 100% sure, but I read it in junior high when I was attending my local junior high. I may have read Animal Farm by George Orwell before that, actually, but I can't remember specifically which one was first, but one of those two was first, and then the other one was probably second. Okay, sorry if I shifted at all. My next question is, what is your favorite classic book cover? So I had to go grab that. But I for sure would have to say this edition of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is, of course, a Barnes & Noble leather-bound edition, and it's just gorgeous. Of all of their leather-bound editions, this was my favorite when I saw it, and so I had to have it. I didn't even know that much about this book, but I was like, you know what, I just need it for the cover alone. So we have this side, which has like the prison on the cliffs, if you know anything about this book. We have the treasure chest, of course the crossed swords, and then a ship on the back, and it's just beautiful. I love this edition so much. And I have also read this and loved it a lot. It's one of my favorite classics ever. Short synopsis is it's about a man who is on the up and ups, and people are jealous of that, and so they cause him to fall very dramatically, and he seeks revenge for this betrayal. And it's very long, yes, but it is so worth the length. Like, I will join many other voices in saying don't read an abridged version of this. Even though it's long, it keeps going, the plot continues going, and it's just extra wonderful to get the full experience of following along with Edmond Dantes, the main character in this book, as he seeks revenge. It's a great book. Love it. Question 7 is classic authors you wish had written more books. Of course, Anne and Emily Bronte, for sure. Wuthering Heights is probably at this point my favorite Bronte novel, but both of Anne's novels follow very closely behind that. And I just think if they hadn't passed away young, that they would have done so many great things, that they would have written even more wonderful books, and I just wish we could have them. It's really sad to me that we don't. Another author I honestly do wish had written more books is Thomas Hardy. Now, he wrote 14 full-length novels, so it's not like he didn't write that much. He wrote a good amount. However, he could have written so much more. Like, he lived for another 20 years after he wrote his final book, but due to the responses to that final book, due to the obscure, he decided to stop writing novels, and he continued with poetry and some short stories, but not with novels. And I just feel like we could have gotten even more great works from him, especially because in those last few books by him, you can really see his skill grow, and I wish I could have experienced that, enjoyed that for a little bit longer before I had completed all of his works. Next question is your least favorite classic, and this is a bit of a tricky one because there are a couple of classics I would call some of my least favorite. Oh, actually, I know which one it's going to be. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I just really do not like this book. I will say F. Scott Fitzgerald is a great writer. The language he uses in this book is wonderful and beautiful. I despise the characters, I despise the plot. I just feel like it's all so pointless and so skeptical and awful, and I just do not like it. So yeah, definitely The Great Gatsby. I did try to reread it a few years ago to see if I could get into it better, and that's when I really appreciated the writing style better. But this book, that's not even 200 pages, I got not even halfway through it and I was like, I just can't. I can't do it. So yes, unfortunately, very much despise The Great Gatsby. I do want to try more by F. Scott Fitzgerald, though, just to see if something else he wrote could work better for me, since I did like his writing style. Question 9 is your favorite translated classic. Now, you could say I could go with The Count of Monte Cristo, but I actually am going to go with Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, because this is one of my favorite books of all time, and definitely above The Count of Monte Cristo, even though I still love The Count of Monte Cristo. Les Mis is just a wonderful book that's discussing really important and relevant issues, as well as creating just very lovable characters, fascinating characters. Even the villains prompt some level of interest in me. I really love this book. It is so wonderful. It actually has some similar plot points to The Count of Monte Cristo, as far as there's a man who is in jail for an unjust amount of time. Once he leaves the prison, he starts off very bitter about it and about his situation, but he quickly decides to lead a better life and prove people wrong who claim that because he was in jail that makes him a horrible, evil person. And of course there's a lot of other characters who have their own things going on, but that's kind of the main plot line. Next question is favorite modern classic, so published after 1900. I think I'm gonna have to go with The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. I love this book so much. It made me very emotional when I read it. It really engaged me. I like Edith Wharton a lot as an author. I will say there's only been 2 of her books that I've read that I've really loved, and then there's her little novella Ethan Frome, which I did not like, unfortunately, and then there was A Mother's Recompense by her that I got partway through and I decided it was just not for me. But The House of Mirth for sure, and then The Age of Innocence as well, I really, really enjoy. Question 11, classic literary places you would like to visit. Oh, so many. I actually have a friend of mine who we are planning a future trip to the UK where we're going to go on just a literary tour, basically. So some places we'd like to go on that list. I would love to go to Charles Dickens' home, Thomas Hardy, of course, Thomas Hardy's home, as well as Elizabeth Gaskell, Jane Austen, and the Bronte Parsonage. Would love all of that. Bath for Jane Austen, obviously. George Eliot and Anthony Trollope, I'd love to see things for them. Canterbury for the Canterbury Tales, as well as Stratford upon Avon, which I have been to before, but I'd like to go back with my friends. Outside of the UK, I really want to go to Louisa May Alcott's house, which, great news, I'm going to be going to her house very soon. I also would love to see Victor Hugo's home, and honestly, it's not 100% literary, but it is kind of literary. I would love to go to the location of the Battle of Waterloo, in part because of Les Mis, but also just for the history of it, of course. Ooh, and I would love to go to Italy and see some of the locations associated with Italian poets, particularly like Dante, maybe some Roman authors as well. So yes, those are a variety of options that I would love to experience. Question 12, first classic you would recommend for a child. I feel like a lot of people say, like, obviously it depends on the child. Personally, I think I'd be safe with most children to recommend The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. It's very short, very easy to understand, and it's a lot of fun. I know some people have chosen The Hobbit, but funny enough, when I was younger, my dad read a lot of books to me and my brothers, and he read us a few series. So he read us the Chronicles of Narnia, Harry Potter, A Series of Unfortunate Events, and The Hobbit. He didn't read the rest of The Lord of the Rings to us, but he did read The Hobbit. And I was really bored listening to The Hobbit, but I really liked Chronicles of Narnia as a child. So I just feel like Chronicles of Narnia will reach children a little bit more clear because it's a little bit simpler. And then maybe if they're a little older, I'd get them into The Hobbit. But yeah, I would say The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a pretty safe bet as far as children's classics go. Question 13 is classics you think are mistitled and what you would title them. This is really hard. I honestly don't have a solid answer to this. I think I'm just gonna go with Shirley by Charlotte Bronte, because Shirley is just one of 2 main female characters that act as foils for each other and yet are also best friends, and I think that could have been showcased better in the title. So it could be called something, not a name. I don't think I would call it Caroline, who is kind of the main character. I think I would call it more something like A Woman's Place or Women in Tumultuous Times or something like that, because I feel like it has a lot to do with women's position as well as social class and stuff like that. So something that encapsulates on that, I think, would be a more effective title for what that book is and would prepare people better for what to expect in that book. The final question is your favorite classic you'd like to recommend to everyone. Once again, of course, it actually just depends on the person, but I think one of the books I tend to recommend the most is Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I love Thomas Hardy and a lot of people know I love Thomas Hardy, so they ask me for where to start with him, and I usually would suggest Far From the Madding Crowd. Or I would say The Return of the Native is another good place to start with him. Or you could do Mayor of Casterbridge or The Return of the Native. Those three are probably the ones I'd suggest starting with. Outside of Thomas Hardy and just recommendations I'd give to him, I think in a general sense, David Copperfield by Charles Dickens is one that will really speak to a lot of people. It is really long, but it's so worth it, and I think a lot of people would find a lot of joy in it. If they didn't want to read something that long, I might go for a Hardy or maybe a Wilkie Collins, like The Moonstone or something, where it's a little bit shorter. Honestly, there's just several that I would recommend, but I'll just stick with those couple by Thomas Hardy and then David Copperfield. In general, I feel like is pretty well liked by most people who read it, so I think it would speak to a good variety of people. So that is it. This video is way longer than I wanted it to be, but part of it is because I could not speak during this video. Oh my goodness. But anyway, let me know down below some of your answers to these questions, as I would love to know what is a classic you would like to recommend to me. Of course, I may have read it already, and if so, I'll give you my thoughts on it, but if there are classics that you love that you would like to recommend to me, please do so in the comments. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!